Welcome to the EasyViz Tableau Made Easy series. This will be the fourth and final installment. In this video, we'll round out our dashboard functionality by doing some fancy tooltip tricks and adding some drill down functionality to our graphs. So here's our dashboard from the end of the last episode where we added some dynamic filters and slices. We're going to continue to build on this now by fixing up all of the tooltips. By default, Tableau will add tooltips for almost every single visualization. And if you've done some custom things like these toggle measures and these normalized measures, generally the tooltips will be wrong and look horrible. I would suggest if you don't want to mess with tooltips, just disable them, which is the first thing I'll show you how to do. Our summary section already shows the information that we want. We don't need to hover over it to see any tooltips in this dashboard. So let's go to one of these sheets and disable the tooltips. We'll go to the sheet. Then in the tooltip section, we simply uncheck the show tooltip button. Let's go back to our dashboard and do the same thing for our summary section. Now, if we go back to our dashboard, you can see when I hover over these sections, our tooltip no longer appears. Next, for our graphs that may benefit from tooltips, let's clean up the actual tooltip. Let's go to our segment sheet and we'll go to the tooltip and we'll start fixing it up. So starting from the top, we'll keep the prefix and I'll just put this next to the measure and then remove this label. We'll keep the segment because that's useful. And then we will remove this normalized measure and the suffix since we don't need it in our tooltip. Let's see how that looks. Great. Next, let's open this tooltip box again, and instead of showing this label as toggle measure, why don't we show the actual measure it's trying to display for our toggle? So if we just insert a parameter, and our parameter being our selected measure, then the label will also dynamically change based on our selected measure. So now it shows sales, and if I select profit, the tooltip will show profit. I like my tooltips for bar charts to also show a percentage, so let's add that. If there's a detail that you need to add to your tooltip that doesn't go in your visualization, we drag it into the details panel. So let's take our toggle measure, drag it into details, and we'll change this to a quick table calculation percentage of total. Let's go back into our tooltip. It's automatically changed this thing to a percentage of total, which we don't want it to do. Let's put aggregate of total measure back in here, and then let's add in percentage total. We'll copy this to keep the formatting. So percent total, and remove the segment, and we will insert the percentage of total aggregate measure. And it's formatted appropriately. And there we go. Did you know if you want to be super fancy, you can actually put a visualization in the tooltip? I'm going to put a visualization of a line chart that shows the trend over time whenever we hover over one of these bars. Let's see how we can do that. Create a new sheet and we'll call it Tooltip Trend. I want the tooltip to show the trend over time. So let's put the order date into columns and then we'll change it to continuous month. Then we'll put the toggle measure into rows so we show the trend of that measure over time. Let's do our basic formatting. So let's remove this. Remove the labeling of this one. Then we'll format and we will remove these lines. So let's go to our axes lines for rows and remove the grid lines. Let's give this some color. We'll drag our toggle measure into color and let's change that to a different palette. Go blue and orange. Since we're showing trend, why don't we add the trend line? Go to analysis and go to trend lines and show trend line. Let's add some values to the start and end. We'll use our dynamic labels we made before. So drag in the normalized measure into label and drag the suffix in and drag the prefix in. Let's format these labels. So we'll go to our label. We'll format this to all be on one line, suffix at the end, prefix at the start, remove any blank spaces at the start and end. and we'll make it show only on the line ends, and we'll make it bold. Last thing I like to do with my line is always make it a little bit smaller. Now our chart for our tooltip is ready. Let's add it to our segment graph. So let's go back to segment, we'll go to tooltip, and we'll add the chart at the end. All you have to do is press insert, sheets, and our tooltip trend. This filter all fields little tag over here will make sure whatever that you hover over will be filtered in the line graph. You can edit the max height and the max width, but let's see how it looks by default. And you can see our line graph is showing. It's a little bit tall, so let's make that a little bit smaller. So go back to your tooltip and we'll edit our max height to be 150. And that's looking pretty good. Let's go back to our dashboard and see how that looks. So we can see the tooltip is showing all useful figures now, and it's even got a nice little trend line that shows trend over time. So now let's do the same thing for our other visualizations and clean up some of these tooltips. We'll add the trend line for these three, but we won't add the trend line for this for obvious reasons, but we will clean up the tooltip. Let's go back to our main dashboard and have a look at those tooltips now. You can see where I don't need tooltips, they don't show up. And for the ones that have useful tooltips, we can hover over each one and get a nice useful tooltip that shows the trend over time for all the different categories we hover over. Another useful function you can add to your dashboards is the ability to drill down. When a user clicks one of these bars on any of these graphs, we can make them go to another page that drills down specifically on this number that they clicked. Your drill down can be whatever visualization that you want, and for the purposes of this example, we're going to present them with a table of data that they can download that make up this number. The first thing that you'll need to do is create the table. So let's start a new sheet and we'll call it Drilldown Table. To create a data table in Tableau, just drag your columns into the rows section. So our first column is going to be the order ID. Then we'll add in the order date. I'm going to right click drag this to bring in the exact discrete date. Then we'll add in our product. So we'll add in the category for our product, and we'll add in the subcategory, and we will also add in the product name. Next, let's add in some customer information, such as the customer name. Now that our dimensions are in as columns, let's put in our measures. You can't put a measure directly into the shelf here. As you can see, if I put it in, it does something very weird to my table and it tries to graph every single section. So to do this, we drag it into this section over here. Let's bring in our quantity. We'll also bring in our profit, and we will bring in our sales. You can just reorder it by dragging it around here. And you can see what it's done. It's created a column section for measure names, and it's created a label for measure values. And then you can see the measures that we've added over here. Let's make our sales and profit dollars. So right click here and format, and we will change it to currency. And we'll do the same thing for profit. Now the Tableau default row banding may look awkward and wrong, so let's make the row banding a little bit more useful. So we can just right click and format, and in the fill panel, we'll check the row banding for our rows. Make sure you're in the rows section, and we will change the level to the first one. And that way it will row band based on the first column rather than this column over here. So you can see it nicely highlights each order separately. With these data tables, I usually like to add in a total down the bottom. We can do that using the analysis tab and by going to totals, and we'll show the column grand totals. You can see it working over here. Next, we'll need to create a dashboard to house this table. So let's rename our old dashboard Executive Summary, and we'll create a new dashboard. Drag it over here and we'll call this Drill Down. Start by changing this to a automatic size. Then let's add in our title. So we'll go back to our executive summary and we'll just copy the title from here. Then we'll add in a text box up the top and we'll just paste in this and we'll change the subtitle to Drilldown Table. Now let's go to our layout panel and we'll make sure that all of our containers are correct. So at the moment, it's just sitting in the tiled container, which we don't ever want to do. So let's add in a vertical container first. Then just put your label into the vertical container. Let's have a look at the layout. And now we have our label in the vertical container. So we can now fix the height. So we just click this pin to fix the height and we can add in our drill down table underneath it. Let's do some formatting on our drill down table to fit it into this area a little bit better. So we can first increase some of the width of these columns, such as subcategories, so we don't cut off some of the text. We can definitely make our product name a lot wider. We can make our customer name a little bit wider as well. And then we will just make the entire thing fit width. Let's see how that looks. Pretty good. Next, let's add the functionality. So go back to our executive summary and we're going to use some dashboard actions to, when we click this, take us to the drill down page and filter down that data for us. Go to dashboard, select actions, and we'll add an action to filter. We'll change this to say filter drill down. Then we need to select which sheets activate this filter. So we'll uncheck dates and we'll uncheck summary, leaving us with the 6 visualizations that will trigger this action. So we'll make the action run on select and then we'll target the drill down sheets table. When we clear the selection, we want to show all values. Then we want the filter to just filter on all fields. Let's click one of these bars now and see what it does. Let's click this corporate bar, which has a profit value of 94K. So if we click this, you can see it currently takes us to the drill down table. It applies this action automatically, which filters down the bar that we selected. And you can see it's filtered out our data to only show all of the records that make up this 94K profit. Now we don't want it to take us to the drill down table. We want it to take us to the drill down dashboard. So let's go back to the exec summary. We'll go to dashboard, actions, and we'll add a new action for go to sheet. And we want to go to drill down. So the source sheets are again the 6 visualizations that we click. So we'll uncheck dates and summary. And we'll make it run on select and our target sheet will be the drill down dashboard. Click OK. Now let's click one of these bars and see what happens. So this consumer segment has 136K in profit. So when we click this, we can see it now takes us to the correct sheet. And if we scroll down to our totals, we can see it's showing the correct 136K profit. Let's go back to our exec summary. Let's test this with a couple of other figures. So let's get this south region with 46K. When we click it, it takes us to the correct sheet and you can see it's the 46K profit and all the records that make that up. Let's check if it works for our regional managers for this 94K figure. And indeed, when we scroll down to the bottom, we get that figure. Same thing with ship mode. We get the 168K figure, which is what we clicked. And it will work with order date. So let's say the month of December for 17.9K, which it works. And finally, we can check one of these ship date by segment. So this is home office for June, which is 2K profit, 2.5K. And indeed, it gives us the correct figure. Now I've been clicking back after it takes me to the drill down sheet just by selecting this tab here. Once you publish this to Tableau server, if you go to server and publish this workbook, I can't show you this because I don't have a site, but it will give you an option in the publish window that allows you to show sheets as tabs. So you will get your dashboards as tabs and they can navigate back and forth via the tabs, but that's not a great way to do it. I like to add a button into my drill down, like a back button that will take us back to the executive summary. So I'll add my button on the top right over here. So I need to split this title into two horizontal sections. So let's add a horizontal container, and into the horizontal container, we'll add our button. So it's a navigation, just drag that in, drag your title into the horizontal container we just made. Let's go to this button and we'll turn this button into a fixed width. Let's go to our title and we'll unfix this width so that it fills the rest of the area. And in our navigation button, let's format it to make it look a bit better. First, let's change this navigate to executive summary so that the functionality is there. Then we'll add in our title, which is the back button, and we will make our background a lighter shade of gray. And we'll change our border to black. We'll make our font black. And that's looking like a nice back button. Let's test it out. You can't just click it in the actual Tableau desktop. In the server, you should be able to just left click and it'll work. But in Tableau desktop, you have to Alt and left click. Then it will take us back to our executive summary. And if we click anything in our executive summary, it will filter our table and take us to this drill down sheet. As a finishing touch, let's just make our summary text a little bit bigger because it should be our primary focus when we first see the dashboard. So let's go to the sheet and we'll format the text and we'll just make the measure name size 12 and we'll make the measure values a little bit bigger than that, maybe size 20. Let's go see how that looks. Much better. Also be careful whenever you're creating these drill downs and such. They're basically just visualizations, so they need to have all of the same filters as all of your other visualizations. We have 3 global filters for the country, segment, and category. You can see those global filters appear in our visualizations. And because we clicked them and made sure that they apply to all using this data source, when you're creating your drill down table, just make sure they're in here. If they're not, just make sure that your filter is indeed applying to all using this data source. If you'll also recall, when we created this, we had this cool little custom date functionality. So if we filter for a particular date period, at the moment, it's not going to filter our drill down because we haven't implemented that filter. So you can see in segment, we have this date filter equals true that we need to also apply to our drill down. So if we go to selected worksheets, we need to apply this date filter also to the drill down table. So now if we select this value for Roxanne for 7.6K, we should go here, go to the total, and it should give the correct value over here. And that's the end of the series. We've made a great little dashboard. We have a concise summary up the top that shows all of our key measures. We've made 6 different charts to show all of our key attributes. We've also added some global filters that allow our user to slice and dice the data however they like. We added a slicing functionality to our summary so they can toggle between the 3 different measures. We created these awesome tooltips so the user can now see trend lines and breakdowns of their values as they hover over our visualization. And finally, we added drill down functionality so the user can click any of our visualizations and be taken to the underlying data that make up the values. Thank you all for watching. I hope you've learned some useful tips and tricks, and now it's time for you to go out there and build your own awesome dashboards and impress some stakeholders. If you've enjoyed this series, please like and subscribe.